The Symphony of Canterlot, Chapter 22, The Fallen. If my guess is correct, I will need some pliers, 10 protein injections, some surgical pincers, drinking water, and 2 O-negative blood packs. Princess Luna was the first one to answer my rambling, as I wasn't even expecting an answer really.
Can we inquire of the reason for such a request?
I plainly answer while going over to the wall to lean on it, wondering how safe we were for the moment. Well, if the gift you so gracefully bestowed to me works the way I think it works, then it can be accelerated if I fill my body with the right solutions. Remove the bullets, inject protein, and drink plenty of water, and I'll be good in a short while. I also need to regain some of my lost blood. On second thought, bring me some of the remaining Nocturne. He probably needs 3 O-negative blood packs if he has been bleeding until this point. Bloody Mary answered to that.
Then I'll fetch the meds. There should be a campus infirmary or a hospital nearby, right?
And since I was getting comfy bleeding on the wall, it was only natural that I had to get up. Alright. Princess Luna, can I have a feather? Her cheeks actually reddened. I then felt like slapping myself in the face when I remembered that Persian Pegasi traded feathers to signify engagements. Sure, Luna and Celestia were born alicorns, but they're familiar with the customs, and while I was a unicorn myself, among both Celtic and Gallic unicorns, the custom of taking the feather of a Pegasus mare lover and writing a love letter with it to signify engagements was another. It's just for spellcraft. If you can saturate with a good amount of ethereal energies, that would be preferable. Please. Princess Luna actually looked to be slightly frowning at that. Not the frowning of realizing she was the butt of a joke, but more like the frowning of the disappointment, like you're being told that you can't drink that milkshake for some reason. But she stretched out her left wing and saturated a single midnight blue feather in the center of the wing, giving it a rather ostentatious star blue hue. She then plucked it with her right forehoof. I took it with my own right forehoof, and that was a mistake because it burned my fur, and started cooking the flesh in my hoof. I personally didn't scream. I bit my cheek and then grabbed the feather with my telekinetic grip. Mary, you mind coming a little closer for a second? She did as she was told, and I unsheathed my Kurdish dagger, and I quickly sliced off some strands of her long blonde mane and telekinetically lifted them. I then took out my trinket, the Hyperborean Perception Amulet that I often used. I took the bronze-looking Hyperborean Perception Amulet and tied Princess Luna's glowing feather to it with Mary's blonde hair, and hoofed it over to Mary herself. Place that in one of your pockets, preferably one with a button to keep it in there. The charge of the perception dampening effect should last you around half an hour, and should give you enough time to come back with the medical supplies. I may not be a medical doctor, but as a chemist familiar with my cellular biology and a decent understanding of equine anatomy, I think I can probably patch myself in the suspiciously not growing Baltican that is somewhere in this office space. Now, just be careful. Mary sighed and took the amulet, placed it in her pocket, and said,
You better not be dead by the time I come back.
That was the last thing she said before she disappeared at that moment. And at that moment, the Baltic Nocturne guard spoke up and revealed his position. I miss rifles. He was currently sitting in one of the seats with a sluggish complexion. Considering the amount of blood he lost, I was surprised that he was awake at all. But the same could have been said about me. But then again, that was recently enhanced. Princess, I think we should get him to a hospital as soon as possible. Do you think the Canterlot Hospital has a growing lab? He's still within the sample gathering threshold for a limb growing and reattachment surgery.
Healers in Equestria are capable of those feats now?
She said, actually being surprised. I, on the other hoof, answered like a tired janitor working in a school. Only in certain hospitals that have the funding and the really well-trained doctors to do so. It's a fairly new science, so not many doctors know how to do it.
If Heracles had not slain the Hydra, or at least had kept some of its flesh preserved, perhaps we, or those before us, could have created the art before our banishment. Though, that would be quite doubtful, as it would be mere chance that any pieces of Heracles' labors would survive to even ours in Celestia's youth.
I considered what she said, and answered well enough, I guess. No point in punishing yourself for that. It was out of your control. Hopefully that procedure will become far more common in the future. Then it happened. The concrete and glass side of the office space window frame was pierced by several sickly yellow tentacles, ripping the steel, concrete, and elegant glass windows from the other side of the faculty office space in the blink of an eye. And there were, floating, all three of the golden-robed ones, and I saw as those tentacles retreated back into their face portals. I reacted by taking the Hyperborean blade I had in my back and threw it to Princess Luna, and took it with her right forehoof as she flew towards them, screaming at the top of her lungs at them. They fired their EF plasma streams towards her, and she used the blade as a shield as the Elder Sign glowed from the blade, and it redirected the EF plasma everywhere, scattering lines of melted concrete, steel, burned leather, and wood. She used a telekinetic shockwave to push back two golden-robed ones from the window, and went after two. They unleashed a myriad of tentacles, but she sliced them off as if mere, well, flesh. I would have stayed staring if I had not my own problem. I was faced with an EF plasma stream and I rolled once to avoid it, and then galloped as fast as I could, ignoring my bullet wounds mostly due to adrenaline and my nervous system numbing technique as I was doing my best to outpace the creature's neck. The Baltican had already ducked and was trying to crawl out of the room, which I noticed as I blatantly galloped past him, and a stream of EF plasma passed a mere centimeter above his ears. I galloped out the door and I could hear the accursed monstrosity flying in my pursuit. The adrenaline was still pumping, but a thought occurred to me as I was galloping around corners and smashing through a door into the break room. I telekinetically broke the electric lamp in the room's ceiling as the golden-robed one finally caught up to me and entered the room. I telekinetically pulled down the cables, and I did so with such speed and targeted movement that I made the ripped electric cabling pierce the equine-like body of the golden-robed one, and I passed ether-formed electricity through the thing much more than the cables were meant to handle, so naturally, the copper melted in seconds, and I galloped past the golden-robed one, slowing it down while I performed the second step of my plan. I mentally concentrated on my hooves, both my back legs and my forelegs burning onto their sides, the Elder Sign. I didn't feel the burn, but I could smell it, the cooking and scarring of my own flesh from the chance that the Al-Azif told me. The thing that was long grafted into the Hyperborean blade and was something that would gather energy from the universe itself, something that cancelled out their power. I continued, and as soon as I got to the stairs, I noticed that they went in a spiral pattern, with the center having a gap in between those rows large enough to fit even a pony the size of Celestia. So, I jumped down the gap, fell 3 stories, and slowed down my descent with telekinesis upon my own hooves. Just enough not to break my own legs, but still enough to let out a loud thud upon impact. I braced myself and then I headed straight to the main entrance of the building and headed right out to one of the Canterlot University's many large courtyards, and I caught quite the sight. Princess Luna was slicing the sickly yellow tentacles to ribbons, holding her ground as she used the Hyperborean blade to her advantage from the endless myriad of sickly yellow tentacles that kept trying to reach her, covering the surrounding area and herself in gunky yellow blood, her swinging like that of a mad mare, her eyes glowing a blinding white, and her metaphorical roar like that of a mighty typhoon in the open ocean as she lifted herself off the ground and slowly floated closer to her opponents. Before they both broke off and flew into the air, the golden-robed one firing EF plasma streams, and Princess Luna blocking them with a Hyperborean blade, both of them flying in various directions to try and catch the other by surprise. But then, I noticed another golden-robed one, its face glowing, so I sidestepped and barely avoided the EF plasma stream. I heard it as it melted the bases of lampposts and melted brick, steel, and concrete behind me, and naturally, the EF plasma stream instantly caught up with me since I hadn't really moved much. I crossed both my forehoofs together to see if my gamble would work out for the better. The EF plasma stream hit, but it dissipated into nothing, only slightly causing my long black overcoat to perturb smoke. The golden-robed one stopped firing its yellow EF plasma stream, the sleeves of my overcoat permeated with white smoke, and my hat was much the same. It made a serpentine advance towards me, sending several sickly yellow tentacles at me, and I stood my back legs and I delivered a well-calculated left jab, punching it away, and another tentacle came and I grabbed it with my right forehoof. The tentacle was tough like bronze coil, and it was devoid of any octopoid features, but yellow and half the girth of my foreleg. It then grabbed me and threw me into the air, causing me to lose my hat. I yelled in compulsion and panic. As I began my descent, I was then snatched out of the air by 4 legs of midnight blue that can only belong to Princess Luna. As I looked down, I saw that we were flying right above the grounds of the university and turning back to the area. I see my opponent, the golden-robed one, fire his EF plasma stream at me, and Princess Luna, already having the Hyperborean blade in her telekinetic grip, shielding us. She then flew us back to the university open area where we were all fighting him, and as soon as we were relatively close to the ground, she let me go. And then I rolled on the ground to break my fall, and then I heard Princess Luna land on my left, something that I could certainly tell was her by both her ether signature and the smell of sweaty mare that I caught from where I was standing. Then, all we were hearing at that moment in the night was a haunting silence. Again, an unnatural stillness. I don't see the golden-robed ones anywhere, which by itself is quite concerning, as it's quite difficult for me to lose the presence of an opponent, and they were probably seeking to ambush us, so I decided to say it out loud, the following, to get her to speed up, and she was the one that had the power to pull off what I had in mind anyway. I have a plan, but it could... Then Princess Luna teleported in front of me, her staring down on me like what seemed like a fleshed face. She then pressed both of her forehooves to hold my cheeks and pressed her lips to mine. Her lips. The lips of one of, if not the most beautiful and dangerous mare in the Western Hemisphere. She aggressively let her tongue into my mouth and had mine at absolute submission. I felt like I was running up and somehow not sinking into the grand waves of the ocean in the middle of a storm. The winds and the might of the world in all of its glory were my ally instead of being cruelly indifferent to my meager existence. I could feel the strange gaseous and slime hybrid consistency of ectoplasm come into my mouth, and I also felt how she twirled her tongue around mine once. It all lasted a second, but I was left stunned. She let out a sigh and slightly pondered the following.
We would expect such venomous bile like the essence of Hester to have a taste, but it did not, and thy secretions taste somewhat like mentha and charcoal.
Then it came flying at high speed. The two golden-robed ones were engaging, and they fired their EF plasma streams. I got on my back hind legs and crossed my forelegs, dissipating the EF plasma stream aiming at me, and I noticed that Princess Luna was to my right, shielding herself with an ethereal shield construct, and with a branch-like symbol of the Elder Sign, causing the EF plasma stream to be dissipating as well. I then saw in my mind's eyes sickly yellow tentacles behind me and Luna. She probably noticed as well as she teleported out of there and threw me the Hyborean blade that I telekinetically caught in midair, and in a single fluid motion sliced the sickly yellow tentacle before it could effectively spear me. The tentacle then retreated around me and back into the face portal of the golden-robed one. The other one that was after Luna missed it and then retreated much the same, and Luna's golden-robed one opponent flew after her as she was above us. This entire time, we had been fighting the damn abominations, and I noticed that they had equinoid-like bodies, except for their faces being portals to some unknown realm where they summoned tentacles and ethereal-formed plasma streams. They floated and flew around in fields of ethereal energies that felt too inequine to be from the unicorn-like bodies, so it was obvious they also came from the face portals. Their reliance on the face portals from defense to attack proved to me one thing. Their bodies were vulnerable, which would have also explained why we could never get behind to flank them. That is their major weakness, and they were doing all in their power not to allow any pony in their blind spots. It began flying again in serpentine fashion, firing EF plasma streams at me. I, bearing the Hyborean blade, managed to shield myself and avoid the blasts, leaving behind scorched holes of melted dirt and rock on the ground and the cobblestone paths. As I did that, and kept moving, I surrounded myself in a telekinetic field and was painfully removing the rifle bullets in my body with clenched teeth. The feeling of more ether coursing through my system helped, probably from Luna's kiss earlier. It was actually two spells done at once, one to learn the knowledge of the Elder Sign from me through my spit, and the other to pump her own magic into me through the mouth via ectoplasm to make it easier for my body to process her ether. It numbed my pain by blocking my nerves, and then I floated the 10 rounds that were in my body, charged them with ether, and fired one with high telekinetic force. Then another. Then another. And another. I kept going until I exhausted all 10 rounds and watched as each one pushed the golden-robed one back further and further as it summoned many more sickly yellow tentacles to shield it from the impact of the significant high piercing power of the bullets fired by my telekinetic force, bolstered by Luna's own ether coursing through me. I then heard a loud boom. On the other floor next to us, the golden-robed one that Luna had been fighting interrupted both me and my opponent as we both saw it impale the large ether construct that was the color of Luna's light blue aura on its length. I saw a spiral pattern of Elder Signs glowing a moonlight white. The golden-robed one impaled on the slight crater on the ground, so my right face portal ceased to exist, revealing a blank where the pony-like creature's face and jaw should be, instead of being a great gap who at the end of a curved patch of hairless skin, yellow blood splattered around it in its rubbed chest. That moment of observation was interrupted when my opponent, Golden Robed One, started to charge its EF plasma stream, only to be interrupted by Princess Luna teleporting and decapitating it in an upward slicing strike, sending its head flying into the air, and its yellow blood spraying, covering most of the upper half of her body in it, and went up high enough that it was partially... well, I was partially drizzled in the substance, and I heard the thump of its head falling to the ground. I felt a presence as we saw right above me, and Luna looked down on us, a golden-robed one, the one I incapacitated earlier with a high-end electric shock. It then began flying straight for us, as Luna threw my Hyperborean blade, and I caught it in my telekinetic grip. Luna manifested a longsword made from her light blue ether, its blade completely etched in elder signs. We both galloped forward and screamed a loud battle cry. It was charging for a large EF plasma blast, and an uncountable amount of sickly yellow tentacles began to manifest out of its face portal. Our hooves glowed in both our respective auras as we flashed forward with great speed, and we felt the tension in both of our blades, and I saw the golden-robed one on my peripheral vision. We stopped, the air catching up with us and blowing dust behind us forward as the front of the golden-robed one's body flew above, covering our faces in the splatter of its yellow blood, and its lower half launched forward and bounced like a stone, skipping over the water twice, leaving behind a couple of patches of yellowish blood splatter. At that point, Luna's ether constructs all turned to glowing dust, and I dropped the Hyperborean blade, and at the moment we both collapsed and we rolled to our backs, and we were both panting, and I started to bleed again, and I felt the pain. I could smell both her and my sweat in the air, along with the smell of burned brimstone and the smell of two distinct forms of blood. I saw as the moon appeared again, full, and the stars once again shine in the sky. We just laid there for a while, covered in yellow blood, and in my case, yellow, and now starting to coagulate red blood. Luna spoke first.
We can hear thee bleeding from here, Folklore.
I then retorted with a slight chuckle. I can't help it. I think I'm still mostly mortal. She then retorted with,
A decent quantity of nourishment should suffice to have thee in relative fighting condition by morning. Had we been pregnant or knowledgeable of earth and mare ways, we might offer thee to drink from thy teats to hasten the process.
Well, that caused my eyes to practically pop out of my head. As much as I would trade my soul for the offer, Princess, don't joke about that. I'm pretty sure that in your time, as much as mine drinking mare milk straight from the teat is quite the sexual fetish. She snickered.
We are well aware, and we are not opposed to it. Frankly, thy fields had not been plowed and seeded in a ludicrous amount of time.
I knew she was teasing me. Provoking me, perhaps. Princess, as flattered as I am, I'm pretty sure as I am now, I would die with a stupid grin in my face, but still very much stiffly dead. She laughed bashfully, a welcomed and almost comforting noise, really.
Unfortunately, that would beeth quite true. But, speaking of which, we think that Mare Bloody Mary fancies thee. If thou survives this labor we have asked of thee, maybe thou should consider plowing her fields. We have not presided over a wedding in over a millennium, and we would enjoy the opportunity to do so again.
I sobered, and I thought about it for a moment and said, Mary may be an assassin and quite the capable one, but I don't think that it would be fair to bring her into my life. Both me and her line of work have a low life expectancy. Either one of us could die at any day. Luna sighed.
We think that is a greater reason to do so. Thou art 35 years of age, Folklore. Unlike us, thou art still mortal. At thy age, most stallions have already married, and have been raising foals by a couple of decades, probably 4 or 5. It would be a shame that somebody like thee would not pass on his knowledge to descendants or apprentices before his demise, and I can imagine the potential of the foals from thee and that mare would have.
I groaned a bit. Times have changed. The usual age for marriage is 20 now, and it's completely illegal before 16, and I wouldn't like to bring foals into this world, not with war perhaps coming, and my own habits. In truth, any mare would be cursed with me, but perhaps you're right. If any mare could take it, it would be her, but even if we do something, we might not bother to marry. I might treat her to dinner after all of this, but not sure if that would go anywhere, though. I could hear the playful snicker from her.
If she denies thee, I call ownership of thy rod and seed sacks.
I laughed. Damn it, it hurts to laugh. With all due honesty, Luna, I think you can do better. I heard her annoyed grunts.
We demand that thou cease that. Cease doubting thyself. Thy callous deprecation is unearned, and it saddens me. And compared to what we did, thy sins can be mended. We do not blame thee, for the lands that thou willingly fought for forced upon thee to commit an act of horror of that nature. We let our jealousy consume us, and the great dreamer's influence taint our mind. We want to leave that behind. Even if we cannot forgive thyself, we hope to continue the fight to protect the innocent. And at the same time, bring enough joy to eventually atone for the horror that we caused. Thee can do the same, and we would gladly help.
I sighed and thought about it again, and ended the conversation. Yeah. That would be nice. I said that, but in all perhaps hope was not for the best. Hope in the end made it all the worse. Hope in reality is the worst of all evils, because it prolongs the torments of equanimity. Fiery abyss. Well, that was quite action-packed and very lovely. Anyway, I'd like to give a big shout out to my stupendously, amazing donators. Yoshi Super Saiyan 2, Peter Coulthard, Nicholas Springthorpe, Dospo, David D. Sanchez, Dwight Cornell, Gaggy, Secret Moon, Orion Pax Kaiju, Starlight Glimmer, Trey, Pokekiller Zach, Soul Dragon, Dak Britton, and Joe Piercy. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.